Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Q, and in this video I'm going to do a full review of the Tier 4 Tech Tree German heavy fighter, the Messerschmitt Bf 110B. Hello there, and here on the tarmac outside my hangar we have the Messerschmitt Bf 110B, nicknamed in German the Zerstörer, destroyer in English, and this aircraft served throughout World War II. Here in Britain we remember it for its relative failure in the Battle of Britain when it was mauled by the RAF, causing it to be withdrawn from that theatre. However, it continued to serve on the Russian front, and later, after the failure of the Me-210, it was pressed into other roles, such as a night fighter. In World of Warplanes, it's a true air superiority heavy, but don't overlook those two potent bombs. What we're going to do now is take a look at the statistics of the aircraft, and if you don't want to look at a spreadsheet, then use a link below the video to skip ahead to another part of it. Here's the spreadsheet showing all of the Tier 4 heavies. There are just the 3 of them. And if you don't know how this spreadsheet works, use the link in the description below for an instructional video which will tell you most of what you need to know. So let's start with the business end of the aircraft, the gun armament, and we have a rating of 14 and cumulative DPS of 238, nominally the second best in class. However, even though it's nominally worse than the C6 variant of the same plane, there's a wrinkle to discuss here, and even though it seems to be considerably in excess of the Blen MF, there's a wrinkle to discuss there. We'll come on to those later. The actual armament, we've got a couple of 20mm cannons, 67 DPS each, 360 rate of fire with a range of 1969 feet. Just bear in mind that that's a little bit less than the Blen MF. There's a fairly miserly auto-aim angle, the distance that you can be off target before the game corrects your aim and allows you to still hit it, of 2 degrees, but then it's the same for all of the guns on all of the heavies. Dispersion angle however, is a very good 0.4. This is not typical of cannons. That's the cone in which the bullets spread out, so they're fairly tightly grouped right from the start, and the overheat time is a fairly good 10 seconds, pretty similar to the Hispanos. It's just that range which is a bit different. Shell velocity 1093 feet per second. There's a consideration there we'll discuss in a moment, but let's move our attention to the cowling mounted 7.92mm machine guns, of which there are 4, 26 DPS each, 1200 rate of fire, 1444 range. So bear in mind that from 1444 feet up to 1969 feet, in theory you're only getting 134 DPS. It's probably a good idea to hold your powder, keep your powder dry, as we say in the United Kingdom, and wait until you're pretty close to your enemy before you open fire, so you get the full weight of your cumulative DPS without overheating, particularly your 20mm cannons. Again, auto-aim angle of 2 degrees, a 0.6 dispersion angle, that cone I mentioned a few moments ago, and again that's relatively tight for machine guns, so that's nice, and a good long 25-second overheat time. Shell velocity is 876, and what this means is that if an aircraft is at some distance from you and banking away as you're firing at it, because the shells arrive at go at different speeds, they may arrive at slightly different times, and you won't quite get as much DPS as you would if you were just hitting the aircraft directly from behind. So, what's the wrinkle with the C6 weaponry which makes it actually less effective than at first blush would appear to be suggested here? Well, this is a sniper cannon, and the rating figure is inflated by the fact that it has a range of 3,444 feet. Well, if you can consistently hit at that kind of distance with this cannon, you play a lot better than I can, because I struggle to get this to hit until I'm pretty close to my enemies, which negates its advantage and effectively brings this rating down. And thus I think the weaponry on the Bf 110B, unless you're unlucky and do get hit at long range, even in a head-on, I'd prefer to be using this weaponry. With the Blen MF, you seem to have an advantage, especially as it's got a puny single .303 Browning machine gun to supplement its rather good 2 20mm cannons, it must be said fairly. But watch it. If the aircraft has time to get this turret fully rotated, which it can do, it will supplement the forward fire of the Blen M by another 40 DPS, and this becomes 225, which is pretty close to your DPS. And what that means is you should seek to increase this figure as much as possible if you want to be confident about going into head-ons with the Blen MF, which is what you want to do, because you definitely don't want to turn fight with this aircraft. Anybody who knows how to turn will outturn you in a Blen MF. When it comes to ordnance, the rating is best in class. It's equal with the Blenheim F, but there's a definite different feel to the ordnance here. In the case of the Bf110B, it carries 2 big bombs, 250 kilograms each, and these are certainly at tier 4 capable of taking out 2 gun emplacements. At tier 5 you may need the demolition expert skill on your pilot, and in fact I do carry that. I find that really helps. The other thing you might do is take out a major secondary target at something like a mining plant, for instance the 50-point target. You probably will struggle to take out the special object in one go because you've only got these 2 bombs. And there's the difference. Because the Blenheim, even though the bombs are much smaller, they're only 250 pounds, so half the size of the ones on the Bf110B, there are 4 of them. That gives you a bit more flexibility, and you can take out the special object at a mining plant, for instance, by placing, say, 2 bombs in one position and then each of the other remaining 2 in slightly different positions. You just can't do that with the Bf110B. So in terms of ground attacking, the Blenheim has more capability, or certainly more versatility, I would say, but you shouldn't neglect the bombs on the Bf110B. Bear in mind you'll probably only get a chance in the game, in most games, to drop your bombs twice because of this long resupply time, 200 seconds. So this is not a Gabreski machine, which the Blenheim is, because theoretically, even if you only get 2 chances to drop your bombs, you still could take out 8 targets, and that's 1 more than you need for a Gabreski's. What hampers the Blenheim F when it's ground attacking is its awful climb rate, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. Survivability, fairly fragile, heavy, please don't get shot. 300 hit points, 100 less than the Blenheim F, but the damage and resistance figures on all 3 of these aircraft are pretty good at 45 and 65 respectively. Airspeed, here's your major advantage. You're the fastest aircraft of the bunch. Now, it's not more than a lot more than the C6, so what you need to do is be able to outmaneuver that, and we'll discuss that in a moment. The Blenheim F, you definitely want to try and use your speed, and particularly if I draw your attention here to the maximum dive speed, if you've got altitude on a Blenheim, it may be worth you not only boosting away from it, but also diving, because you are considerably faster in a dive. Cruise speed is rated at 277 base, maximum boost speed is 329. Your boost duration is 30 seconds, which is 5 more seconds than the Blenheim F, so boosting away from Blenheim F is a good idea. It will run out of boost before you do, provided you're managing your boost carefully and you're not short of it. Manoeuvrability is a bit of a brick. I've already mentioned it's not as manoeuvrable as the Blenheim F, so you don't want to be turn fighting with the Blenheim F if you can possibly avoid it. On most occasions, you want to boom and zoom it, come in, hit it hard with the weaponry, and then fly away before it can get itself into a position to shoot you. The optimum range here of 125, that's the 125 miles an hour in which your characteristics of your aircraft don't degrade. This is pretty good, especially as the maximum optimum speed is very nearly the top boost speed as well. So you remain fully capable almost all the way up to maximum speed under boost. And the minimum optimum speed is 196, so you'll retain those characteristics even if you slow down to shoot down a crippled bomber. But warning, you do slow down to shoot down anything, you need to look at your mini-map and make sure you're not presenting an opportunity for something to get on your tail, which will then do you lethal damage before you can accelerate away from it. Altitude performance, again, something you should seek to exploit. Excellent altitude performance, certainly better than the Blenheim F. And your climb rate is a lot better than the Blenheim F. Now, if you're already at altitude and you're fighting a Blenheim F, it may be worth, instead of diving, rather you can climb instead and gain altitude. At some point the Blenheim F is going to struggle, and then you'll be able to loop down round or do a hammerhead turn, and whilst the Blenheim F is struggling you can come down and hit it very hard with your weaponry. So that's an alternative way of combating the Blenheim F. If we look at the power to weight ratios, there's not much to see here. They're all pretty close to one another. Nominally you can accelerate a little bit faster than the Blenheim F and a little bit slower than the C6. At least that's what these figures would tend to suggest. Unfortunately, what we don't know about in the game is drag coefficients on any of the aircraft. So it's entirely possible that these figures don't fully reflect the truth of the situation with regard to acceleration. Not much point, in my opinion, in looking at the worst in class figures. We've only got 3, so even if you have a best in class figure here, so for instance the rating of 44, it will be on the airspeed, it will be 3rd worst in class here, so we'll ignore that section. So what would I do with this aircraft? Well, it's a true air superiority heavy. You want to keep it as fast as possible at all times. You want to keep as high as possible at all times, except when you see your opportunity to use your bombs. Look at your minimap, assess the threats, and then go down and use them. And quite often you'll be able to flip important sectors to you. And the climb rate is decent enough to allow you to get back up to altitude relatively quickly and perhaps attack a bomber that's over the same sector as you're contesting. This is not true of the Blen MF. So in that sense, it's a more flexible aircraft. If you are going to slow down, I've already made this point once, I'm going to make it a second time. Make sure you look at that mini-map and you ensure that you're not giving an opportunity for something like a Bf-109B to get on your tail, because if it does, you're not going to be able to get away from it. It's fast aircraft. You're not going to accelerate fast enough to save yourself. So be cautious about trading speed for a kill. All right. All that said, I think it's time to go and see how I've set the aircraft up. Here we are back in the hangar. Now, my Bf-110B, you won't be surprised to learn, is fully specialised. However, what you'll be missing when you first acquire the aircraft is as follows. Of 3 equipment slots, you'll be missing the one off the engine, and of the consumable slots, of which there are 4, you'll be missing one off the airframe and also the engine. Let's pop this back into specialist configuration and we'll discuss what I've actually done with the aircraft. Go. Okay, so unsurprisingly, in the cockpit slot, we have a gun sight. It's up to the ultimate level, and as you can see there, I have 10%, well, 15% chance of it inflicting critical damage and a 5% accuracy bonus. Now, if I were to be starting afresh, I would probably not choose those characteristics, or at least not some of them. Let's just get that back up. I'd probably drop at least the 5% critical damage in favour of the 3% accuracy bonus characteristic that's at the bottom there, number 5. And I'd probably actually change the critical damage to a chance of causing fire, although I'm not too unhappy about the 10% chance of critical damage. So that's a good start. Now, you don't have many choices on the uprated engine, or as many at tier 4 as you do later. So let's just see what your choices are. Engine armour protection, probably not going to be the choice of many, I suspect, at this tier. The lightweight power unit, well, this aircraft isn't very mobile. You may be thinking that you get a little bit more time on target, or you will be able to outturn other Bf-110Bs. Might put that on. I think most of us would probably choose to put on the uprated engine for more speed, certainly more cruising speed, and that's what I've done. Bear in mind that you lose resistance to fire when you do that, which may or may not affect your choices on pilot skills. May also affect your choices on whether you want to mount a first aid dressing package or a fire extinguisher. We'll discuss that later. So I have the uprated engine. This isn't quite fully calibrated, but it's close to it. 10% resistance to fire, that's definitely a bonus characteristic I'm going to keep on this. 1% acceleration without boost, maximum speed with boost activated. Let's see if there are other characteristics there that I might like to go for. I'd keep the acceleration with boost activated, or sorry, maximum speed with boost activated. That's the only way you can increase the boost speed on this aircraft. That bonus characteristic there, well, I say that, I haven't looked at experimental equipment or indeed special project equipment. I'm not sure there's ever special project equipment for tier 4 aircraft, truthfully speaking. And what else would I have there? Well, if you aren't going to have the acceleration without boost, you may very well just try and pick off the 1% cruise speed. Which, I think the acceleration is nice. Now, here's a key piece of equipment. I've gone for gas-operated action to get the DPS up, and this is an experimental gas-operated action piece of equipment, which means it has a bonus characteristic I don't believe is present on the standard equipment, which is 5% damage inflicted by forward-firing armament. And then I've gone for 10% cooldown to get the guns back more quickly if I overheat them, although you've got 10 seconds, so you should be able to avoid that most times. And then I've also increased the burst length again with that bonus characteristic. Now, we'll have a good close look at the effects of the build after this section, but I just want to show you very quickly. That's taken the cumulative damage up from a base of 238 all the way to 285. Now, there are some effects coming from here, I believe, as well, but this makes this pretty violent in a head-on. If we look at consumables, well, despite the reduced survivability or resistance to fire, which is down to 46 from 65, I've still chosen to mount a first aid kit. It's annoying if you lose your pilot when you're following something with the tail gunner, you lose all your accuracy. And also you want to try and keep your rear gunner in action if you possibly can. Now here, this consumable, I probably wouldn't pick this these days. In fact, I'm going to change it now straight away to pneumatic control assist, just for a little bit of assistance when we're fighting perhaps BF 110, other 110Bs, probably not a lot else. The exhaust bleed inerting system would also be a good choice because it reduces the chance of fire by 20%. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you pick that one off. In fact, I'm actually quite tempted to pick it off myself right now, but I am going to. There you go. So there you go. It's sort of betwixt and between as to whether I'd put on pneumatic control assist or this one. I'm going to put on this exhaust bleed inerting system. Reduce that fire risk. You can see the bonus there. We're back up to 56. I think that's a good choice. Engine cooling, no surprises there. If you've got any boost at all, this adds 10 seconds to it. And if you're fleeing from another heavy, an extra 10 seconds worth of boost is going to be invaluable. Finally, universal ammunition. As usual, there are gold options, but I don't use them. I don't recommend that you do either. That's entirely up to you. Okay, so let's talk about pilot skills. Well, of course, this is a two-person plane, so we're talking about crew skills here and not pilot skills specifically. But let's see what we've done with the pilot straight away. And first off, now this aircraft is not manoeuvrable, so we're probably not going to ever want to get aerobatics expert. Probably will, certainly if the aircraft is in specialist configuration, want to put on aerodynamics expert and get that boost to this uprated engine by another 40%. And therefore, by the same token, you probably want Engine Guru 1. It's up to you as to whether you pick this one or that one first. I always go this one. And then after that, you probably want Marksman 1. Now, maybe thinking that this is a bit of an odd choice, but I find putting on Demolition Expert just makes those bombs reliable in Tier 5 games. So you can still reliably take out 2 gun emplacements. So I'm actually going to keep that. However, if you are going to soldier on without that skill and just rely on the bombs being good at Tier 4 and possibly not quite so good at Tier 5, then you'd probably want to reallocate the points. Possibly take off cruise flight here, take off that one, and get Engine Guru 2 as soon as possible. Certainly, I'm heading towards Engine Guru 2. As soon as I get another free skill point here, I'll be taking off this skill, which does actually make the aircraft good for getting between sectors, but doesn't actually help you in combat, off, at least temporarily, and put on Engine Guru 3, and then I'll be working my way up to Marksman 2. As far as the gunner is concerned, I always tend to pick off defensive fire first to reduce the damage done by an enemy aircraft. Sorry, I'm just looking around there because Dilly the cat is making a noise. You may want to go for Precision Gunner first. The problem is that both of these are 3-point skills, so they take a while to earn. Precision Gunner will target the most vulnerable sections of enemy aircraft. Typically that will knock out the engines of aircraft, which means that they can't pursue you as effectively. That's nice to have. In any case, these are the first 2 I would head for. Quick reflexes temporarily. I've actually got a couple of points here, but what I'm trying to do is build up to 5 and then manage to increase the range of the gun through these 2 skills here. This one is pretty useless. At least I think it's useless. It increases the burst length of a turret by 50%. Well, the burst length, there doesn't seem to be any burst length on turrets as far as I can tell. But this one, the ballistics expert, increases the range. On a good rear gun, that's a really nice skill to have. To be fair, this gun is fairly... so it's perhaps not quite so important. It's nice to have the endurance skill for trying to avoid injury to the gunner. And the vigilance just increases the range at which you can detect aircraft. And in a heavy, that's quite a useful skill because it means you may get the upper hand in planning an attack by being able to maneuver into position before your enemy has seen you. So that's pilot skills and gunner skills. Now it's time to go and see the effects of those equipment choices, consumable choices, and crew skills on the aircraft's base characteristics. So here we are with our second spreadsheet of this video, and in column C and D we have the base characteristics of the Bf110B, and then we have the characteristics after the effect of equipment choices, consumables, and pilot skills. And then down column G we have the absolute difference in numbers, and here we have the difference in percentage terms. So let's see what's happened. Well, straight away we can see that the rating has gone up to 15 for the guns. Of more interest, I think, is the fact that the cumulative DPS is up to 285. Now, if you don't have an experimental gas-operated action, piece of kit, which is what I've mounted on this aircraft, you'll be able to get this up to somewhere around about 276, 277. So the difference is not a tremendous amount, but I just like having that extra. And we can see some details. The DPS has gone up, the rate of fire has gone up, which is why the DPS has gone up, of course. We've also been able to improve the accuracy. The auto angle is now a little larger, so you can be off target a little more and still hit your target. And the dispersion angle, the way that your bullets spread out as they leave your guns, has gone narrowed, which is a good thing. 0.528 there. It's actually down to 0.352 on the 20mm. Those are really nice, accurate guns. Could possibly do a little bit more there. Maybe there's a little bit of calibration I can do. The tighter the better. We've even been able to increase the overheat times a little bit, 5%, so 26 and a bit quarter seconds there on the machine guns and 10.5 seconds on the overheat there. So that's nice to have. Big improvement on the guns, and as this aircraft is all about the guns in the end, that's a really important. Now we put on Demolition Expert as a skill, so we've got 10% more damage off the bombs, up to 9,680. We've also increased the blast radius by a little bit as well. I calculate that out as being 10%, 270. There's some interesting mismatches in the figures for blast radius, so I really don't know whether this is realistic or not. But nonetheless, even if this isn't the correct figure of 246 to begin with and 276 subsequently, it's still gone up. And that's put the rating up by a point to 8. Now, we have put on the exhaust bleed inerting system, and I've reflected that on the spreadsheet. That gives me a 20% resistance to fire. However, the uprated engine gives me a 25% more chance of fire. The net of that is 5% more chance of fire. And if you calculate out 5%, it's just a little bit under 62, down from 65. Interesting, therefore, that the GUI shows 56. What's going on there? Don't know. Haven't worked it out yet. Tend to believe my figure rather than the GUI. But there you go. Be that as it may, there is definitely a drop in the the fire resistance figure. Airspeed, another nice little bonus here. The rating's gone up to 47. We've got a 10.7% increase on the cruise speed. Now, something I didn't mention in the previous section is I've actually got a special livery on the Bf110B, which gives me 3% more cruise speed. However, as I've noticed here, the GUI misses the effect of that special camouflage, or it doesn't work. So in the GUI, it shows 299 miles an hour as opposed to 306.64. But we all are all aware that there have been some issues with the GUI, so we're never quite sure what's happening. I can't tell you whether this camouflage simply doesn't work or whether the GUI is wrong. I'd like to think it's the GUI that's wrong. We also managed to get a very slight increase by the use of a bonus characteristic on the cruise speed. It's a couple of miles an hour. Well, it's better than nothing. This is a pretty handy aircraft, provided, as I said previously, you don't slow down too much to kill something like a bomber with its engine shot out and then give the opportunity for an aircraft to get on your tail, because you're not going to get away with it. Be wary of dropping your speed. The faster you go, the better it will be for you generally, unless you are completely safe by looking at the minimap to slow down and shoot down that lumbering bomber. No effects on manoeuvrability. We have managed to tweak the climb rate ever so slightly to 248 feet per second, which is nice. And finally, no effects. Don't know why we've got 0.3579 and 4. Those figures are incorrect. Ignore that. There's no effect on the power to weight ratios any. Okay, so as you can see, that's a pretty nice boom and zoom build. So now what we need to do is go and see how this aircraft performs in battle. The map for the forthcoming battle is Scorching Sands. It's the edge of the world variant. 5-sector map, laid out in 5 spots of a die pattern. We have a central garrison. Tactically important because it allows easy access to all the other sectors. Not strategically important. What are strategically important are the 2 military bases, one near each spawn. These will fire rockets at the enemy sectors to try and flip them to your side, provided your team doesn't go and die on those same sectors. And then we also have forward airstrips of limited value on the other axis. However, if you're trying to get to the enemy military base and you possess this forward airstrip, it just makes it slightly quicker to do so. The way to win this map, at minimum, you want to hold your military base and your local forward airstrip, and then the central garrison for as long as possible. And if you do hold that garrison, you want to use it as a springboard to try and get to the enemy military base and take that. If you can do that, you will win this game. In any case, you want to be holding at least one military base for much longer than the enemy team. Look at the order of battle. We can see on top tier, We have a P-43 at Tier 4 alongside me and also an HE-112. Neither of those two are specialised. And then we have 3 Tier 3s, a P-35, a Bristol 133 and a specialised Focke-Wulf 159. We've got the advantage of the extra Tier 4. The enemy has an F2A and a specialised Bf 110B. Presumably is going to be my main competition in this battle at Tier 4. At Tier 3 they've got a Wirraway, tricky aircraft and one to watch out for. That's the only ground attacking capability in the game. A couple of specialised aircraft, the BK-534, nice Tier 3 fighter, and a Skua, probably not quite so nice, but you don't want to get in front of its guns, and then an A5M. So let's go and see how this battle turned out. And as we go into battle, this is a natively recorded Windows file. It's not one of the World of Warplanes replay files, therefore the motion may be a little bit jerky, but the reticle will be accurate. Straight away we're going to the military base. We're going to try and take out the air defence heavies, and then if we need to we'll use the bombs to complete the capture of the sector. First one begins to come into view. Very nearly kill that with this extra DPS that I've got straight off. I can manoeuvre with the air defence heavies because they're bots. That one's dead. The second one has been shot down. We still have more work to do here, so I'm now looking around at the minimap to make sure that nobody's managed to get across and is interfering with my capture of this sector. I'm going to drop the bombs. First one away. Second one away. I actually get credited with both of those targets, even though it only took the first one to flip the sector. So now we're going to go and chase that bomber and try and secure the central garrison. Now there's a little bit of desynchronization on the audio. I hope you won't mind that too much. Looking around at the minimap at all times. Still only really the bomber to worry about at the moment, and it turns conveniently for me. We begin to fire, and as soon as I get the full DPS to bear, it doesn't take very long to kill this aircraft. Now, I've looked at the minimap, there's nothing nearby. I'm safe to go for this light fighter, and I want to because it's trying to kill my ground attacker. That's down. Now we look at the gaggle of aircraft up and above us to the right. Decide which one we want to shoot first. The F2A is a possibility, but I've seen the enemy heavy. I've decided to concentrate on that. Down he goes, and frustratingly, as so often happens, you kill an aircraft and you lose a sector. So we're 3 sectors to 2 down, and I see that we're under threat at our military base, so I head back there, although as it happens the A5M is shot down, and then strangely the Wirraway crashes, so there's no further threat unless there's a bomber over the top of that sector. I want to check that. It will help me gain boost, and then I can come back and attack the central sector when it's unlocked. No bomber around? Well, if they're not here already, they soon will be. Expect to see them approaching shortly, and in fact I see one straight away. And there's a second off to the right. Check which one's closest. It is the Blenheim in front of me, so that's the one we'll try and take out first. Ideally I'd like to take it out over the central sector at an absolute minimum. I don't want to let it reach our military base. And now we have the central sector, and we're 4-1 up. I'm free to pursue this bomber at my leisure. And down he goes. And all's looking well at this moment. The enemy are attacking our airfield. And this is one of those moments where I actually pick the right moment to go low with my heavy, but then choose the wrong option after I've completed my attack. Let's see how this works out. So I see the enemy heavy in front of me. I'd like to kill him. That's good. The F2A doesn't quite get destroyed. I managed to get some shots into the Wirraway, and all I need to do now is fly away, get some separation, and then attack again. But because I'm so concerned that they're about to take this sector, I turned far too early and the F2As pursued me. If he hadn't, I would have got away with that, but he did. And now, not only have they taken the sector, I've lost my aircraft. Mistake. And this is what I mean about being disciplined with heavies. The initial attack there was fine. I was behind all three of the aircraft. I killed one of them. Then, having gone past the other two, all I needed to do was fly away, get distance, and then at a safe distance turn around and repeat the attack. I didn't, and I paid for it. And now we're under considerable pressure. So I've spawned at the airfield. Immediately there's a multi-role coming in. Low health, so I'm able to finish him off very quickly. The air defence heavies over the central sector, which is the one that I was aiming to capture next, are low, so I go low as well. We've got lots of aircraft in here, so I should be reasonably safe. And in shooting down that air defence heavy, I now flip the sector back. So far, still so good. I decided to stay low because I've got bombs back. I can see that our military base is under threat. I can't get there as quickly as I can get to this one, and with these bombs I can help flip it. At least that's what I'm hoping. The A5M behind me can't keep up with me and in fact gives up. The bomb is released. A second bomb is released. Both targets are destroyed, but we've gone backwards a little bit, so we've lost an asset here. See the F2A off in the distance. Pursue him, still low. Still keeping a very close eye on the minimap. It's still safe to do this, but it's getting increasingly less safe. I don't finish the F2A off, but I do not try and turn with him. Instead I shoot him with the rear gun. And between us, the air ground attacker and I shoot him down. Nothing else is that close at the moment, so I swing back in low, having seen the Skua, which I know will go after the ground attacker. We've now flipped this sector. We're in serious danger of losing the other two. Whilst I'm here, I should kill the Skua though. And I have. And immediately we've lost another sector. The enemy is making consistent inroads into our advantage. Looking to see what I would be best doing next. The A5M is threatening me. Fortunately he flies straight at me. It doesn't last very long. And now we're 4 sectors to 1 down. This is a really good effort by the enemy team. My bombers will be heading towards the military base. It's critical we get the other military base. I can't stay and defend the other military base. We'll just have to hope we manage to retain that for long enough to win this game. I can't afford to mess around at the garrison in case my bombers get shot down over the military base. So we're looking for the air defence heavies, and my big problem here is that although I can take out the air defence heavies, I've got no bombs of my own to complete this capture. Once we've got these air defence heavies, we'll have to let the bombers do it, the bot bombers that is, and go off and see if we can do something else. That's one of them down. This one proves to be a little bit tricky. I try to manoeuvre with it, it keeps turning into me, which is exactly what you should do. So, whilst I'm able to stop it attacking our bombers, I'm not able to knock it down very quickly. And now finally I'm able to get shots in to finish it off. My bombs are still quite a long way from reloading. I'm going to have to rely on the bombers. Let's hope they capture this sector fairly quickly. Bots being what bots are, sometimes they do it fantastically quickly, and sometimes when you really need it quickly, they will take forever. See the enemy heavy. I'm looking for an opportunity to take this sector. I decide to shoot the light air defence aircraft first because that's a quick kill, even though it puts me at some risk of being shot down by the heavies. See a pair of multi-rolls ahead of me. Don't land the shots properly on what I think is the P-43 first, but now I've killed it. Winged Legend goes through. Now I'm going to go and try and take the air defence heavies, and frustratingly my bots have still not captured that military base, although we're now 3 sectors to 2 up. Don't quite finish off that heavy. He's manoeuvring in a way that makes it difficult for me, so I decide to disengage and shoot the other heavy, which I should be able to kill much more easily. And I do, and that flips this sector just in time, because we have now lost the military base I helped take a few minutes ago, and finally my bot bombers are able to take our military base. We're now 15 points behind, but with 4 sectors up, as soon as we're ahead, even if we lose a sector, we will win this game. But what a tough battle. All credits to the enemy team, especially as they were one of the high-tier aircraft down on us. May or may not get to this bomber. Wait and see. Obligingly, he swings in towards me, comes within range of my 20mm, and even as he drops his bombs, I shoot him down. That gets me the Hero of the Sky badge, and that's the end of the game. Hard-fought victory. Well played to my P-43, well played to that Wirraway, and well played to the enemy team in general. They made that really tough. And that brings me to the end of my look at the Messerschmitt Bf 110B, and in my opinion this aircraft is a true air superiority heavy. I've demonstrated what I would call a boom and zoom build with high DPS. This makes this aircraft really effective at tier 4 and pretty competitive at tier 5. If you're a newer player of heavies, my recommendation is that generally you try and stay high and you try and stay fast. More experienced players, especially those of you inclined to play the FW57 perhaps a little bit too much, will know that that's not all there is to flying a heavy. You have to pick your moments to go down, to use your ordnance perhaps, or shoot down ground attackers. At that point it becomes critical to use the minimap to judge what you're flying into and perhaps even abort the attack. And whatever you do, don't make the mistake of being undisciplined like I was in this battle and turn too quickly to try and take on threats that you've just zoomed in on, because they will probably be following you and will shoot you down, saying thank you very much. Well, I hope you found that helpful, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q, signing out.